Hello. Sorry we're late. We had some technical issues with the technical people sorting it out, though. I can't explain it to you, but I think we're here.
I think we are here. I'm 5 minutes late, and I'm also just filling in for the initial little intro. But I'm very happy. I know it's been good working with Luke all this time, but I'm very happy to introduce Shane, who has made some little cameos here and there on the previous videos. But Shane is an expert in tools. I think he might have been here longer than you even.
Yeah.
The expert.
Even before my time.
And he's done a lot of sort of study overseas, and very
without further ado, just clap him in.
I'll go. Here he comes.
You got better go out first.
And I'll fade out. Distance.
Yeah, cool.
Hey,
Shane's here.
Hi everyone.
G'day Shane, welcome to this thing that we do on the weekends.
Yeah.
Good times. So today we're going to be talking about fixing up old tools. It's a bit of a passion of Shane and mine and Shane's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about what tools you might find secondhand, whether they're good or not to fix up. Generally they are, but not all of them are. What else are we going to talk about today?
That's going to be pretty much most of it.
Yeah.
But that's it. There's a lot to cover in that, because you might find something like this and something like this in a bin or at a secondhand shop and not really know what to do with it, or whether it's good enough quality or what you would do to get it in working order. So we're going to cover that, and we'll break it down nice and easily. We're going to talk about the metal components and the wooden components, because that's most of what most of these tools are. There's some metal component to them and there's some timber component to it. So we'll talk first about those metal parts and how to get rust off them and how to get them back into good order. We'll talk about the wooden components, and then we'll come back to just how to tune them up at the end to get them absolutely singing. That's how we'll do it.
Yeah, totally. And with this, particularly with the older tools, it is going to be a lot more wood than say plastics and things, which is great because wood's a lot easier to work. So if something breaks, it's a hell of a lot easier to fix it.
Yeah.
Even with like plastic tools and stuff, I've got a couple of plastic handled saws up here.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. And if they were, heaven forbid they were to break, I would replace them with something timber, because it's just easier to work.
Well, and also we're woodworkers, so we know how.
We are woodworkers. Yeah, we're not plastic rights.
Plastic rights
is the term.
Yeah. We also have here as great examples these two shovels. If you want to show them that, you might recognize these shovels.
It's a famous shovel. This is Meryl's shovel from Gardening Australia last night.
Australia. She was great.
She was. Yeah, she's good. She's all right. She's not a bad volunteer. She kind of pulls the work.
So Luke was on Gardening Australia. I don't know if you saw this last night with Costa, fixing up old tools as well and old gardening tools, which is really great. So this is a great add-on to all of that. Yeah, we're sort of go into more depth about what we talked about last night, and that was total peak life achievement for me. Fixing up Costa's granddad's saw was awesome. So thanks Costa, if you're out there. He watches our things. So hi Costa.
Hi Costa. Appreciate it. Yeah, all right. So, should we kind of get started?
Yeah, why not? Let's just talk about some of the things you're likely to find a little bit, and then we'll jump right into de-rusting. Yeah. So, I know that we've gotten donated into the Bower lots of old tools, and what happens a lot from my experience is that someone will clean out an old shed in the backyard, family member has passed away or they move, and so all those tools end up coming in, and they'll often be beautiful. They've just been sitting outside, getting a little bit rusty over a period of time. And you'll have, chisels. Oh, I just got shorter. Chisels, hammers, saws, things that look like this.
Lots of old files. You get a hell of a lot of these coming in.
It works like this.
That's right. Yeah. So that's. I mean, we don't see many of that style in there. That's kind of like, this would have been the power. How do we do this? This would have been the power drill of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, these are great actually.
So you can actually stick it on your chest and really get some force going into it.
Yep.
Whereas maybe a little egg beater, like this little guy down here, for finer jobs. But they work well. They work, like if you need to put a hole in something to put a screw in, they work perfectly.
Yeah, and these little ones that I love. So what will happen with these is they'll be a little bit rusty, so they don't work so well. But as we're going to cover getting rid of that rust and oiling them up, they'll work beautifully. And you get a lot of control with these. So if you're working with timber and you just want to do a small hole in something, the gentle control you get with this is actually really nice versus
just having that control just in the trigger, in that finger, that small little press about fast or slow. So yeah, that's a really good point.
which is one of the beauty with hand tools in general, like across the board. 'Cause
Yeah.
it really, it's you interfacing with the timber, like you've just got that real control. Ash raised his hand like he had a question. I wasn't sure what it was. But yeah, that's the great thing about working with hand tools and working with these old tools, that you really like down in the material.
Yeah, totally.
Which is fantastic.
All right, so we're going to work through. We'll get started with sort of derusting. A typical thing that we would, as an example, that we get into the shop of these old saws. Particularly old saws, you can get these to sing, to like really get to a point where they're like back to as good as new, fantastic quality, and you can keep them that way for their entire lifespan.
Yeah. This one, for instance, it was donated to the Bower, derusted it, and then actually got it all sharpened. And I've been using it for 4 years now, and it's my favorite saw.
And is that the one that you looked up the patent to?
Yeah, it is. So this one, little fun fact about this saw.
This is a great fact.
Yeah, this saw is from the late 1800s. I've actually looked up the patent for this specific saw, and originally it would have been about that big. The steel went down to here, but over years and years of sharpening, which you can do with these old tools, it's now about that big, but it's still got potentially another 100 years of use in its life, which is amazing.
Could you grab us one of the sorry guys, Ash, could you grab us one of the orange handled sort of construction saws over there? Yeah. So a lot of the newer saws that you get, which you get for next to nothing, they're like, you buy them new, it's hard to imagine how it's kind of possible. If you can get a saw like this, I don't know how much they sell for, it's between 10 and 20 bucks or something, a lot of the cheaper versions.
Yeah, or less.
So, someone had to make that, the metal had to get mined, the plastic had to get, formed. Like, there's so much work in industry that goes into it, and so much energy that gets put into it. And they're somewhat disposable items. Like, if you look at the teeth of those, of this saw.
Can we get in closer on that?
Or do I need to go in closer on that?
I think Ash will move it in.
Yeah, so if we can go, here, might have come around a bit. So they've been hardened, those teeth, in a way in which it's going to make the teeth sharper and stay sharper longer initially, but once they go blunt, then it's extremely hard to sharpen. And so once this goes blunt, although it'll stay sharp longer than, say, one of these saws initially, once it's blunt, it's a throwaway object, and all that goes in the bin. Hopefully you take it to metal recycling, but it's just a waste. Whereas something like this, potentially, we can sharpen until it's like a fish knife or something. Like as Shane demonstrated with his, it just gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So you've got one tool to last you your whole life.
Yeah,
which is sick. So now to start fixing these up, I've just been, these little saws have these screws on them. I've taken 3 out already. It's just a little flathead. And I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to be able to take the handle off so that we can kind of address the metal from the saw plate or the saw blade. And then, Shane, I've got that. And then we can address the handle as well. So I'm just going to get those off. And we're just going to clean this metal with vinegar.
Yeah.
Which is
so what happens
simple.
with almost all these, like I've said, did I say it in this version?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'll
say it again anyway. That all tools are pretty much a metal component and a timber component.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, good.
But that's good. No, it's worth repeating.
Yeah, and so, we're going to be talking about the metal components first, and what the major risk with your metal components over time is that they'll rust, as metal does, but specifically steel and iron. So these tools will have a very high iron content, and so they will rust over time with moisture. You leave them in the back shed on a humid day, or they get wet, or anything along that line, that moisture will cause corrosion in the iron. And over time, that will eventually break down the iron, and it can create little pop marks and holes. So you need to get all of that off, first of all. And then hopefully what's underneath, if it's all really good, that rust is just on the top layer. And so you can kind of get rid of all of that, and it's really nice and happy underneath. Yeah. If it's really bad, though, the risk is if it's gone really, really poorly and that rust has made big, deep pots in it. Something like a chisel back, for instance. If that was, do you want to get?
Sure.
If that was to have a lot of huge dips in it from corrosion, then you'd never get it's sharp because it would always have a little dip in it. So that's the first thing to look for when looking at old tools, is how bad that corrosion
You
is.
can kind of see that on that saw as well. There's a bit of pitting on that. It's less important on the saw. It's still going to function as a saw, but on
Definitely on those blades or anything along that point. Look at the back of those blades, and if it looks really, really corroded, it's probably not going to be able to be brought to happy shape.
Yeah.
But most of the time, something like this saw,
Yep.
that looks really rusty and really corroded, but that's just mostly a surface layer. So once we get that off, it should be able to sink
Yeah,
beautifully.
you can sort of see that difference in the rust and where it's been protected
yeah.
by the handle, that metal section there. So you can get some vinegar and some steel wool and just start rubbing this off immediately. But if you submerge this in vinegar and leave it for a period, it's going to be much quicker and much easier and much more enjoyable to fix up, less sort of elbow grease.
Yeah.
So we've got a little thing of vinegar over here. So we're going to plonk this one in. Yeah, let's see if we can. You guys can have a look at this.
And vinegar's not the only thing that will work for this. Oh, I don't know how loud that was. Was that loud?
Is that? Yeah.
Vinegar's not the only thing that will work with this. Go back to it, so I'm the same height as you again.
Yeah. The magic of television.
Yeah. So most acids will remove corrosion. Corrosion on iron is oxygen interacting with the metal, so it becomes these iron-oxygen things, and the acids will grab that oxygen and pull it off. So it'll pull away all the rust and make it easier to remove it. So vinegar, citric acid are both really common things. You can buy citric acid at the grocery store, and you can get vinegar at the grocery store, and both of those will corrode these without causing remove corrosion without causing too much of any further corrosion in them.
Yeah, so some corrosion can happen though if you wanted to leave it in for a long time.
Yeah, potentially if you left them in for a really long time, the acid would start to attack the metal as well. I honestly don't know exactly how. And some acids will do that more than others.
So we've had these in we put it in on Wednesday, was it?
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so like 3-4 days.
Yeah.
I've left stuff in for a lot longer actually, and you'll see all the rust and stuff starting to foam up out of it. But yeah, should we get some out and actually
show them how it works? Absolutely.
So
we're going to put that one in.
We're going to put
the other
put this one in. I
first.
will get all this stuff out first. I might move this back over here. Or Shane, do you want to do that actually?
Do you want to? Let's just show it to him. Let's show him what's in it.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, we've just pulled out this mysterious tub, and they don't know what's going on. But you can see, first of all, a couple of things you can see. There's a whole bunch of tools in here. We've got all of these rusty old tools. And you can see the water is a little yellowy. The vinegar water is a little bit yellowy as well. And that's some of that iron already coming off and mixing with the vinegar. So you can see it's already doing something.
And I don't know if you guys can see, probably not, but there's actually, you get these like little bubbles of oxygen coming up, and that's the vinegar removing the rust, and as part of that process there's a little bit of oxygen that comes out.
That's freeing away.
Yeah, which is sort of interesting.
It's sort of.
You could watch that for hours, couldn't you? Do you want to grab us that saw blade?
Yeah.
And we'll start having a look at that, but we even grab most of that stuff.
Yeah, I'll give you the saw blade first. Should be
pretty vinegared and clean. So you can see without it, this was probably not to the same extent as that one, but it was close to it, and even just by it sitting in that
We
yes.
have one question here asking
Yeah.
if it's neat vinegar or if it's mixed with water or not.
Just neat, just plain vinegar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read stuff that you can dilute it, but I've always just used it neat.
Yeah, in vinegar, it's the acetic acid in vinegar that's doing it. Same like citric acid. With vinegar, you've got acetic acid. Vinegar is naturally like a 5% solution of acetic acid and water, so vinegar already has a high content of water
There you go.
in it.
Do you want to get a close-up as I start to see, so they can see that kind of how easily stuff
This
comes
one's already,
on?
I've just wiped this.
Yeah, like if you leave it in there for a bit, it is a matter of, you can almost do it just with your fingers. But have we got that?
Do it just with cloth, not even the steel wool, because that's done.
I can't help
Okay,
it.
fine.
All right, so look at this, just a couple of wipes. And Shane's right, I probably could have just done this just with a rag. Like that, and then I can get my metho rag, which I'll have to replace. And then that just comes back to, I mean, it's not a polished finish, but all that rust has been removed. And we can start, that's something to work with. And you can see on it, there has been there's a little bit of pitting where it's actually corroded into the metal. But that rust has been removed. and we can put a little bit of oil on that when we're finished fixing it up to protect it, to stop it rusting further. And then on the other side, so there's a good example. You can see all that rust that's on there now. Can you see that? And like this is what taking me less than a minute, really, isn't it? It's not. Once you've sat it in there for a bit, there is zero effort involved in getting that rust off, and it's kind of, which for a lot of people, it's an eye opener. It's like, yeah, people that don't, whenever they find out about this vinegar trick, it's like, it's a big deal. It's like, I didn't realize it was that simple, and it is that simple, particularly if you can leave it in there for a little while. Like the rust is off that now. And the idea I think a lot of people have, and I had before I kind of learned how to fix them up, is that you see these rusty old tools and it looks like a lot of hard work to remove all that rust, and it isn't. You just get your trusty mate Vinegar to help out.
Yeah.
And then it's just, yeah, so that's done. Rust is removed off that. Like Shane's little Challenger axe head.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Look at that. I've just wiped that with a cloth, and it's already looking beautiful. This hammer, I'll just mention really quickly as well. So I wiped this hammer down with a cloth. Can we get in close on that? And you can see that parts of it, can you see that? Parts of it are cleaning away nicely, and then in other parts there's that really thick buildup of corrosive material. So with that, yeah, that's pretty clear. So you can see in the middle there, it's that kind of battleship gray, it's that nice steel underneath, and then on the other bits there's these big chunks. So those big chunks, they're not wiping away with a cloth. I could try steel wool, but the other thing I can also try is like a brass bristled brush.
Yeah, it's always a tough one to
I
say.
have such a hard time with that one. And then I can take that, and that'll just kind of remove, you can get in close on that. Once it's sat in vinegar and it's kind of broke down, that'll just kind of come off quite happily without much effort at all. And that clears away, and I can just show you that. So that's already starting to come back to nice, beautiful steel underneath.
And that was an extremely rusted hammerhead.
Awful that one was. Huge chunks of corrosion. But just a little bit of soaking it in the acid and letting it, then coming back and scraping that away with just a brush like this one, we'll pull off all that built-up corrosion.
One of the things I like about cleaning the rust off old tools is like it's just not messy.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get anything on your hands or anything. I'm joking. That was a bad joke.
It was.
You get
joke.
stuff. You get stuff everywhere. But that's that's another thing that we use this stuff for in the workshop, is that once that rust and that vinegar kind of mix together, it turns into, I can never remember the name of it. Is it acerbic? What do you call it?
Acetic acid.
Acetic acid.
Acetic acid. So it doesn't turn into acetic acid. The acetic acid pulls the rust off.
Oh, is vinegar acetic acid?
Vinegar is acetic acid.
What's when the iron and everything's in it? Is that?
It's just got iron in it.
Oh, it's just got iron. There you
It's
go.
got
No, I
iron
learned something today
iron
as well.
ions in it.
But that as you can see, it's darkened my hands. We can actually use that to darken wood as well, to have a blackening effect on wood. So that's another. So even when you clean up your tools, keep the vinegar, and you can use it to blacken your timber.
Yeah. If you have another question.
Yeah, sure. I know we'll be talking about the timber handles soon, but if you left the timber in the vinegar as well.
We've got a good idea. We've got a good example of that.
Yeah,
Right,
where is that
stuffed
down
up.
to? Yes, a really good question.
Is it over there? Yeah, is that one there? It's a great question.
That one right there. This?
No, it was this. Oh, it's here. This one. Yeah, what would happen if you left your timber handles in the vinegar?
Yeah.
I, by mistake, left this beautiful old screwdriver half submerged in the vinegar.
And you can see that's kind of what it was before, and then the bit that was half submerged has gone that dark black color.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been in a house with hardwood floors that are nailed down, around those nails you'll see that there are these big black kind of marks. The iron interacts with the tannins in the timber and causes the timber to naturally go black. So if you left these in there with the wooden handles, the iron would come off of the iron bit, and then it would get into the wood bit, and it would cause it to turn black. It's not necessarily a problem. It's not going to cause the timber to corrode or anything like that. It's just going to be
darken it up, which sometimes is a nice thing. You might want to darken your timber for.
Yeah.
In fact, that's how that's black. That little section there of the toolbox. Some
just a little bit of iron,
rusty vinegar.
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah, it's a really good trick.
Yeah.
What do you got there?
I've got an old hacksaw, which there's still a little bit more rust to come off it. The blade was pretty far gone. Again, like that. So a lot of people, that would seem like a sort of a throwaway item, but we can get a new blade on it. And now I have another hacksaw. We have another hacksaw.
Yeah,
it's really
our courses.
Yeah, and they're just cool. It's got like little brass screw on the end here, and what you want to make sure is that you put the saw on going the right way.
Yeah,
that always helps.
Do you like your hacksaws to push or pull?
I was just thinking that I'm putting it on as a push.
Yeah, I think that's what I like too. Coping saws I like to pull, as just a side note, if unnecessary.
And so now there's a beautiful old tool. It still needs a bit of work. There's a little bit more rust that can come off here, but it's an adjustable one as well, so I can get different size saw blades in there by taking this screw out. That's a beautiful hacksaw, and you'd probably pick that up for, I don't know, $1 at the Bower. Don't know how much the blades go for, but then you'd get a pack of 10 for not a lot. Yeah. And that's all the hacksaw you need for the rest of your life, and perhaps your kids' lives, if you've got kids.
So they don't need to be it's not only worth it to do it on old looking tools or fancy looking tools. Any tool that you could potentially use is worth spending some time to get back into working order.
If you look at this, actually, this is the saw plate that we've just taken the rust off. It does start to rust again pretty quickly. So there's already just a bit of a sheen of rust. So what I'm going to do is remove that again, just quickly. Wipe it off, and then I'm going to put some oil on it to stop that corrosion.
You can, between those two, just wash it down with water really quickly to pull off any more of the acid that's sitting on the surface, and pull off any more of that rust with the acid, and that'll clean it off, and then you put the oil on. The great thing about oil is that, as I said at the beginning, it's moisture often that encourages this rust. So if you put an oil layer over it, that moisture can't get to the metal as easily, and so it will reduce the amount of rust that occurs. Something I also want to say is we use vinegar, citric acid. People use molasses. Molasses has oxalic acid in it. That's what's doing it. But what we wouldn't use for this sort of thing is what is called a rust converter, which is a really useful thing on some things, but not so much for tools. What a rust converter will do is it has an acid in it, I think phosphoric acid, but it's also got like a coating in it. So it's going to harden on the surface with a coating, like a lacquer-y type varnishy thing. So with your tools, you're going to be coming back and shaping them and sharpening them later. You don't really want a coating buildup on them. So cleaning them off with the vinegar first, and then putting like a natural, like a motor oil or a tool oil on them is the best thing to do. It's also really good with these as well. How's that looking?
Yeah, it's looking good, looking beautiful. So I'm going to use this little guy. This is a Paul. I saw Paul Sellers. He's a kind of internet woodworking sensation. Definitely looking him up if you're interested in this sort of stuff. That's where we learn a lot of our things. And that's just an old tea towel that's been jammed into a baked bean can.
It doesn't have to be a baked bean can.
Doesn't have to be, but I highly recommend it. And then it's just, there is a whole lot of oil. That rag is saturated with a whole lot of oil. And you can just leave it like that, and it'll basically, I can rub it on my tools, and it'll just put this very thin sort of coating of oil all over the tools, which will help protect it, and also like lubricate it for when you're using it. For the bottom of your planes, if you put this oil on it, it's going to protect it, but it also actually helps it lubricate. And it's amazing the difference that it does to the use of the tool as well as protecting the tool.
It's the same for, so we've got a set of pliers here that were really rusty, and when they went in, they wouldn't close because they were fully rusted, and I haven't actually tried this yet on these, but yeah, no, they're beautiful. So you can already see just by soaking in there, they're already starting to move again, so that the nice thing about soaking it versus just coming at it and cleaning it is that vinegar will have gotten inside the joint as well to break down any corrosion in there. So now we can scrub this back, and then if we oil that, we can clean it with WD-40, which was discussed in the electrical program
or RP7, which is the same thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
What does RP mean? Have
I ruined it?
I don't know. Was it
If
rust?
anyone knows what it means, give us a call and we'll tell you that we love you, like Andre did last week.
I can't do that like Andre did. He was great.
It's because your first go, this is part of your initiation. You
I have to tell
sell
people I
around
love them live on air.
Yeah.
All right, cool. But yeah, so that's the same process essentially. You get all that rust off, you clean it away, and then you can oil it up, and it'll work really beautifully. Works with garden shears, it works with pretty much everything. It's amazing. Are there any questions about metal before we move on to handles? Is there anything coming through?
I've got one more thing to add. Vinegar stings your cuts.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, it will if you.
You got a cut on your hand, or you accidentally drilled into your finger.
Yeah.
We just have one other question to say that name again that you were just talking about.
VRP7.
The Sellers.
What?
Peter Sellers?
Oh, Peter Sellers.
Paul, is Peter Sellers?
Paul
Sellers.
Paul Sellers.
I forgot
Peter
now.
Sellers. That's an actor.
Yeah, Paul Sellers.
With a
He's an English woodworker, and he does a lot of videos on kind of tool maintenance and hand tool work and sharpening and that sort of stuff.
He's great.
He's awesome.
And then just the type of oil again. Which oil?
This one's 3-in-1 oil. It's a thin oil. I don't know.
Sewing machine oil is great. 3-in-1 oil is great. Basically, you want an oil that's not going to go hard on the surface. So if any oil that you might use to finish a piece of timber is not going to be the right oil, like linseed oil wouldn't be good. But 3-in-1 motor oil, I'd stay away from like food oils because they could potentially go rancid over time. Yeah, and there are special tool oils that you can buy as well if you want to get fancy.
But yeah, for this one it was 3-in-1, which I don't think I've actually got any left. It's all in there. But you can get it from the hardware store.
Before we touch timber now, we definitely need to
do we want to, let's do that.
Is there any more questions about metal bits?
I might actually go and quickly wash my hands.
Yeah, you do that. I'll just keep the audience entertained while you're away. Washing my hands. So you should wash your hands for about 20 seconds. That's the recommended. That's about all I got. So the next thing that we're going to cover is the wooden bits. We've talked about derusting iron, and most woodworking tools are going to be iron or steel, which is iron with carbon in it. And then the next bit is going to be your handles. Often the handles are fine. Like they'll look a little bit old, they'll look a little bit worn down. Ooh, do you want me to come over here?
Yeah.
But I'm shorter if I stand over here.
Where'd my brush go?
So, are you okay?
Yeah, I lost my oil brush.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back, sorry.
So the handles are often like fine.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean,
Even that. So that's a good example. I'm gonna go wash my hands.
yeah, this little handle here, there's nothing really wrong with it. It's it's a bit worn. It's seen years of use, but there's a little bit of a bit of timber coming up there, and that's from just when I pulled the handle out. We could put a dab of glue in there and then stick it down if we wanted to. We don't really need to. I would just put a little bit of oil over this to where the finish has, like it's maybe degraded in some areas. It's going to cover those areas up and then just help prolong it. You can though if you want to, and I'm a bit scared about this because even though I have washed my hands,
There's still little bits of iron on them.
This stuff's hard to get off, so you can see my hand's still kind of dirty. But I'll use a rag and
The reason we're concerned about this is, like we said before, if we've got iron all over our hands and we're working with these tools and we want them to look really nice, the timber bits will potentially go black. So he's got this lovely timber piece here.
So this timber handle here came from this saw. And I actually went to the extent of removing the old finish and sanding it back. I used a paint stripper to get the old finish off at first, and that's, it's a pretty noxious chemical, so you kind of, that has its problems. And then I sanded it, and it took me a while, and to be honest, I'm not going to be rushing back to sand all my handles down when you can just get some oil and just chuck it on. As far as the functionality of it goes, like most of these handles, that's the kind of treatment they've got.
I just love them. Like that's the history of this saw. You've got bits of paint on it. You've got oftentimes on wooden saws you'll have the name of the previous owner stamped into it.
Yeah.
And I'd hate to lose all of that.
But I did want to do this just to show you what it is. If that's what you want. If you want to really try and bring it up to sort of more of a new finish, you can. And this is with all things timber. That age is just on the surface. All the timber that you might be able to see behind us. We take that kind of first couple of mils off the top, and you're back to pretty much raw timber, perhaps with some like little nail marks and stuff, which gives it a bit of character.
Yeah.
So
the first step is, first you have to remove the wooden bits before it goes in vinegar. So theoretically, we've already done that, which we have.
We have.
You've then, if you wanted to, you've removed all the coating. If you don't want to, it's probably fine. Oftentimes, even just working it, holding it over time, you get your hand oils on it. the best way to take care of tools is by continually using them. You're going to keep them nice and protected that way. But if you've gone down this route, if you want to not have nice, happy, beautiful singing handles, then you can remove all that coating and then just kind of recoat them with something else.
And so we're going to do that with linseed oil today?
Yep.
Okay, linseed oil.
So
this is the guy here that we're going to be using. And in here we've got a mixture of linseed oil and terps. And this is in a rice cooker. So what we usually do is heat that up. So it's a 50-50 mix of linseed oil and terps. The terps sort of thins the oil out more, and it allows it to penetrate into the timber deeper. And then the terps evaporates and just leaves the oil in there. Yeah. And we heat the oil up. Generally, I haven't heated it up here. It's not, you don't have to do it, but it's something that we generally do in the workshop. Yeah. We heat the oil up again to kind of make it a bit thinner. And it allows it to penetrate into the timber deeper as well.
It also speeds up the hardening process.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There you go. It's something I didn't know. So for this one, because I can't find my brush, I'm just going to plonk it in there. And it doesn't fit.
Do you want to rag?
I've got a rag here. It's more my fingers I'm kind of concerned about.
Yeah.
I'm going to just fill it round, but you can. Yeah, it just looks. It's just. And oil, one of the lovely things that oil does is brings out the grain of the timber. You got? Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah. So one thing I'll just bit of.
You're not going to leave that in there, right?
Yeah, I might for a little bit. Why not? Let it soak up. One of the things I wanted to show and why I was disappointed that I can't find my brush is that oil is a bit of a pain to clean from your brushes. And so what I do is, or what we do here in the shop is we have a little container. Generally we have to maybe say chop the end off a brush so it fits in the container, and we'll leave it in an airtight container with some oil so we never have to clean that brush up. If the container's airtight, the oil isn't going to oxidize, the oil isn't going to go off, and we can leave that brush in there, and that's going to be our forever brush for oil. Yeah. So that's what this oil brush will probably turn into, because I don't like cleaning up brushes.
Yeah, you can clean them up. You just need to use something like terps to clean it. Water is not going to get it off, so you can use terps to clean it up a little bit, and then you can use some soapy water afterwards to come and remove any leftover bits.
Yep.
I have usually a jar of dirty terps or white spirit or something along that line that I'll use over and over and over and over again.
Universal terps, I've heard that referred to.
Universal terps?
Yeah, like your leftover terps that's been just, you keep using it again and again and again.
And eventually it becomes like almost a thick block of the stuff that you've pulled off, and then that goes aside. But yeah, it is. You have to work with these chemicals to be able to clean off that oil.
So usually...
That is looking really nice.
Yeah, I will. Usually I would leave this in for like about 15 minutes or so. To really allow it to soak into the timber. And I might, once I've shown you, I might actually put some more on it and let it soak in. But it's just a thing of beauty, and you can build up layers of that oil over time, and you'll see things that you didn't see before, like the little flecks and grain and stuff in there. But it's that simple.
One thing I will add to that about that soaking process is you don't want to just leave it forever with a lot of oil on it. It'll start to harden on the surface. And it'll harden at the top first. It won't be the best layer. With any sort of coating, it's always better to have multiple thin coats. But you're leaving it there to let it penetrate. And then you've got to come back and wipe off all the excess. Yeah. So you get a nice thin coat that'll harden.
For sure. Yeah. And if you do, like Shane's saying, if you put that oil on and then walk away and don't do anything, you will have a sticky, I think you described it best saying that like the top of your kitchen counters, all that grease and stuff that builds up there, that's kind of what it feels like. It's just slowly going to harden on the surface, collect dust, and it's
awful.
Undesirable.
Yes. Any alternatives to the oil you put on?
Yeah, you can coat them with pretty much any sort of wood coating, essentially. Oil is nice because it's just really nice.
It's very simple as well. It's really easy to apply.
Yeah. A lot of modern tools come with more of a lacquer coating or something else on them, which is also fine. Pretty much anything that you would coat timber with.
So when you say lacquer, is that like a polyurethane?
In this case, lacquer is gun cotton, the sprayed pre-catalyzed lacquer spray, which is the stuff that like chips off of old handles as well. If you get an old tool, not that old, so say something from the 70s or something, that coating will chip off. That's a spray.
But that's more of a covering over the outside
on the surface of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what are we moving on to? We didn't get to rehandle anything though.
We can rehandle. I think let's do handles.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's just getting the old coating off, getting the surface off, which isn't necessary. You can leave it like I do with the beautiful handles on. It's personal preference at that point. But there are other cases, like with chisels or hammers, like this one, for instance, where you can see that the old hammer head has broken off, and you might need to make a new handle for it, which is not nearly as intimidating as it might seem at first. Once you get used to working with these tools, a bit more familiar. So I've got this one that I've started to derust, and if I wanted to make, that's got quite a taper in it. If I wanted to make a new handle for that, you can buy some kind of pre-made handles, roughly, something that's kind of already that shape, but already there, that sometimes work beautifully. But you can just kind of make that shape from a piece of timber like this one, which is going to be a very big.
But why not? Once you've got the skills, you can make as big a hammer as you like.
Yeah. So you can see now this doesn't fit in there. So all I have to do is reshape the top of this to get that to work. While I'm doing that, did you want to talk about other handles as well?
Yeah. So I do
okay.
actually. We've got that hammerhead that Shane got out of the vinegar also needs a handle, and Shane's in the process of shaping up a handle. But this is the handle that came from this hammerhead, and it's still okay. It's just originally they'd used some metal wedges to wedge the handle into the hammerhead, and they kind of loosened up. So I'm going to have a go at actually putting this back on and putting a timber wedge in. So I guess that's kind of a good segue into how these actual handles work. So the handle itself fits into the head of the tool. So in this case it's an axe. For Shane's it's a hammerhead, and then a wedge is applied to really push that against the sides of that head and hold it in place. So if you look at the top of that one there, I don't know if you can see that, there's like a little slot that was in it. I didn't cut that in. That was the previous person that put that handle on, cut that slot in. And so I've just made from a bit of timber. I took it over to the disc sander, but you could just do it with like a little power sander, or you could use a plane to make a wedge. Is that visible there? That wedge at the end?
There's one in this as well.
And so now that's going to go
on the top there.
Yeah. So now what that's going to do is once that's in the top of the axe, that wedge is going to spread the top of that handle out, and it's going to hold it on. And that's kind of how it works. And like Shane pointed out on this little hammerhead here, you can see that. So that end is smaller than that end there. So there is a wedging, like there is a taper that goes on like that, so that when you put that handle in there, it allows for the movement of the timber to spread out.
Do you want to draw it?
Sure do.
Yeah. Because it's a little bit of a visual thing, but basically you got your handle going in, and then that wedge causes it to spread out. That way, when you're hopefully not doing this with your hammers, but when you swing it like that, it's not going to come flying off the end because it's a bit wider at the top than it is down the bottom.
I should have been Mr. Squiggle.
You should have.
So this is a pretty bad drawing.
You just want to be on everything now, don't you?
Yeah.
Gardening Australia, Mr. Squiggle.
Mr. Squiggle. So this is obviously not exactly how it looks to scale.
It's a thin handle for.
So that's the handle that's been spread out, and you've got your wedge in here. So this might even come up here to start off with. You got your wedge that goes in like that, wedging it out. Obviously the handle would be the same
90
size.
degrees as well.
And then you can come and chop that off.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Not if you agree.
Viewers
awesome.
at home.
Fantastic.
Oh, they loved it.
All right.
I'll just really quickly point out, I've just been shaving down the sides of this, and what I'm using here is a spoke shape, which we introduced. I think you talked about it in the first session. And this is one of the great uses of this tool. It's a little blade that I can control just like that, and it's perfect for reshaping a piece like this. And the whole process here, it's not complicated. I haven't measured this out or anything. I'm just putting it on there, pressing it in, seeing where it indents, coming back and just removing material and material over and over and over again. Eventually what will happen is I'll be able to get that hammerhead into there, so that handle, once it's shaped down, I'll be able to get it so it sticks out the top a little bit, shove a wedge down in that end so it opens up like that, and then it will work just fine. I've actually had to do that on this hammer here a number of times. And this was just a piece of wood from a friend's property, and I just broke it down, shaped it so it's got a bit of a weird shape to it, stuck it in there, wedged it off, and it works beautifully. You don't have to have the most beautiful, perfectly shaped handle in the world. And in fact, I really love this one because I've been able to shape it to my hand. So when I pick this up, it just feels right, which is amazing.
And some would argue that that kind of misshapen, handcrafted handle is more preferable than the tool
I
machine.
love it. Yeah,
There's something really lovely about that.
Handled a number of those.
What are you doing?
I'm just sawing this wedge off so that I can hammer it into the axe head.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm going to stop with that because it's going to take a little bit longer.
I've started to put this onto the hammerhead. Axe head. It's not all the way through yet. I put a little bit of glue on. Actually, I'll take it off if I can to show you. There was a little bit of a split in part of it, just in here, and so I've put a little bit of glue in there so that when it all goes back together, that's going to get glued back together. So you don't necessarily need to go out and make a new handle.
Yeah.
Although a lot of the time you do. And it is, it's a nice process to do that. So I'm just going to hammer that
Do that
down.
loud?
Is that loud for you guys?
I don't know.
And now I'm going to put a little bit of glue on my wedge on both sides and spread that round with my glue spreader.
That's going to go right down in there. Spread that out. It's a very traditional, very old way of doing this, and it works wonderfully. Some chairs are made in exactly that same way.
Yeah.
When we do our stool making course.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. You know what?
That's one I methoed earlier.
Yeah. So this stool, for instance, it's made this way, uses the same principles. That goes up into there, and then if you have a look at the top, you can see those little wedges that are in there that cause it to open up and hold this in place. We do. Hopefully when we're back in session, keep doing these stool courses where you can learn how to make that yourself in 2 days.
Totally.
How's it looking?
There, and then there's your new axe.
Done!
So I'll get a bit of, I'll go and get some water and I'll wash that glue off. And then I'll just get a saw and cut across the top, and then I've got a new little hatchet for spoon carving, for carving out your spoon blanks.
Yeah, or for more handles for other things.
Or for making more handles for more tools. Yeah, that's a good point. It just never ends. This is circular.
It's all you ever do is work on your own tools.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it isn't it. Yeah, be warned. It is an addiction. When you get into this sort of thing, like making your toolboxes and filling it with secondhand tools becomes the job.
You always find them, and you'll look into a box and you'll see the potential of what's in there. You look at the saw and go, that one will be stunning once it's done up.
So I'm going to just get, I'm going to wash this quickly.
Yeah,
and
cool.
then I'm going to come back and saw it off, and then I've got a new axe.
So that's pretty much it for the timber bits. You can clean them up. You don't have to. You might have to replace some bits. And often with these tools, it's good to just do that naturally. Shape it to your own hand. Shape it to how it fits, and then they're beautiful. What are you doing?
Just making a mess over
Yeah.
here.
Maybe we could just show some of the other old tools that people
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've had a look at these, which are wonderful. Same as with the pliers. Once they're de-rusted, they'll work beautifully again. You've got files, old files. I've found so many files in the bottoms of boxes from sheds. The same process. We've got some in here that we've had soaking. That's rasp, and that corrosion is coming off. And then you can come at that with a brush, such as this one. It's got all these little fine bristles on it, and that'll clean any rust out of that file, so they'll work beautifully again.
Sweet. New axe.
And that's it. We got chisels, we've got hammers, we've got axes.
You can see at the top
We've
there.
got it all.
That's just been wedged open with that little wedge, and that's holding it in there now. And that's, yeah. And there's nothing really wrong with that handle. There's a little bit of rust developing again, so I'll have to oil that head and put some oil all over the handle.
This is actually a really good segue into the next section, actually.
And that's, we've talked about that before, but how cool is that? The Challenger.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
It's printed on it.
I don't know, that's just fun.
Is anyone familiar with that?
Yeah, does anyone know where these little hatchets come from? Or if that was just someone's...
So once you've maintenance that,
yeah,
and we're going to move into talking about tuning up the bits, and we're going to move into talking about hand planes and chisels as well. But a good segue is, now that you've got the rust off of that, You've got the handle in happy shape again.
Yep.
Now it needs to be workable.
Yep.
So the next step is getting your tools into working condition. You'll have to sharpen that axe, and so often you need to tune up your tools and you need to sharpen them as the next bit we'll be discussing.
Absolutely.
How would you sharpen that?
The axe. Okay, yeah, it's a good point. So for this one, I actually brought in a little piece for it as well. Is it over here?
What are you after?
I have a little axe. It's called like a little puck, a little axe puck. It's like a grinding stone. So for this, depends on the extent of it. When you're sharpening things, we use things called like stones. So we have water stones and oil stones.
We'll clear off some of this.
So what Shane's just bringing out now are some water stones, some Japanese water stones. And they are basically abrasive blocks of a variety of grits. And much like sandpaper, some grits are coarser, some grits are finer. So here we have, I think this one here is a 400 grit. This is I think it's about a 1000 grit, and I think this is about a 3000 grit. And so what that's referring to is how fine those particles are. So in a certain amount of space there are 200 bits of this coarser material, 1000 in here and 3000 in there. So when we're using these things, basically we're getting an edge finer and finer and finer. For an axe like this, I might even go something coarser than that. I might take it to like an electric grinding wheel or a file to try and just start getting that edge nice and fine. And once I've sort of gone as far as I can with that coarseness, then I can go to a tool like, or not a tool, but a stone like this, and I could use these stones to work over the top.
Oh, you do it like that by hand?
Yeah, I go to and fro. Like sometimes I'll have it here, so there's different ways of using it. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat.
Don't skin cats.
Yeah, not that you should, but we can have it on a board like this, and I can go back. We have actual. Do you want to grab one of the bench hooks for it?
Yeah.
We could sit it on a bench like this.
Yeah.
And I can sort of, if it stays, we actually have some like that, and you'll see just starting on the edge there, you can just start to see some sort of fresh metal. So I would go to a grinder to start this off to get that edge, and then come back to these to further refine those edges and get it sharper and sharper and sharper. Yeah. You can even go further once you go to a grinder or a file, up to your stones. Then you can go to a thing called a strop, which is just a bit of leather glued down to a board, and you can put some cutting compound on that, so it's getting even finer and finer and finer.
It's the same, yeah, you're just working like with your sandpaper. You start rough, you remove a lot of material, and then you start to refine it, and you refine it, and you refine it. And it's the same with chisels. Yeah. However, with a chisel, like with an axe, there's so much force behind it. The sharpness isn't necessarily, depending on what you're doing with it, as important. But with a chisel, for instance, you're usually pushing that sometimes by hand through a piece of timber. So that definitely needs to be very sharp.
Yeah, absolutely. And the axes can be sharp as well. Like for some work, you might want to have a bit of a razor edge, but that is a good point, depending on what the tool is that you're after. I mean, a shovel has a sharp edge on it as well.
But that sharp
actually,
is
that one doesn't. But
different than on your kitchen knives or on other things.
Yeah, so like we've sharpened the back edge of that because we do want it to cut through the soil. It makes it easier. But the sharper it is and the thinner that edge is, then the weaker that will be. So if you're plunging it into the dirt, you want to have that balance between... or even just the dirt itself, you want to have that balance between how sharp you want it, but also the sort of robustness of that edge and how long it's going to last.
Sharpening in general is like a whole category under itself, so we're not going to spend too much time on that today.
Yeah,
the main thing is to know that, you know, as you get your old tools, you deal with the metal bits, you deal with the wooden bits, and then you're going into refinement. So sharpening is something maybe we could talk about it another time. I think there are lots of great videos out there about sharpening that you can look into, and there are loads of different ways to do it. So we're not going to spend too much time on that. What I will mention is just with your blades like this, these sorts, you have a flat back and you've got a bevel, and that back needs to be flattened with some sort of grinding plate or glass, sandpaper on glass or something like that.
Yeah,
a flat surface.
Extremely flat
perfectly
surface.
flat. And then you kind of sharpen that bevel down. That's all I'm really going to talk about here. Yeah, you got a question?
Does the bow have a sharpening service, or can you get that done somewhere? Or?
We don't have it. We teach sharpening in our courses. That's part of our definitely part of our introduction to woodworking course. We don't have a sharpening service as such, but I think you can. There's a lot of hardware stores out there that would, at least for the
grinding,
the initial grind.
Yeah.
So
with your tools, regardless of whether you know there's a service out there. With saws, there are some services you can look up saw sharpening, and that's actually it's like $20 that you can do it. Although it's pretty easy to do it. But with your chisels or your plane blades, it's really important that you learn how to sharpen them, because you will be sharpening them regularly.
Yeah, that's
before and after almost every task in woodworking. It's good to sharpen your tools. However, like you said, some people will do that initial grind because that can take a long time to get you back to the rough shape, and then you want to hone that and refine it to what you need. Any other questions? Cool, great. So with a chisel, you've got that bevel that comes down. Luke's going to talk a little bit about sharpening saws, but while he's getting his saw back in space, I'm just going to talk a little bit about planes as well, because these are something that will come in quite often. And they're complicated devices, probably one of the most worrying, but as long as, again, the pitting isn't so bad on the bottom, that bottom needs to be able to be perfectly flat. The blade looks in good shape. You can go through the same process. You can clean up the knobs. You can flatten the bottom. This one I have out, it looks relatively new, but when I got it, the bottom wasn't flat. It actually was a little bit concave. And someone I know had been using it for almost a year and struggled to get a good result out of it. So I went back and quite aggressively flattened it. It took me quite a long time to get, but now this plane works really beautifully for me because I've taken that time to get it in working order, and now it's one of my first things that I reach for all the time.
All right.
Yeah. Want to talk? I'm not going to go too much more into it. It's basically there's lots of components. You de-rust them, you clean them up, you get everything flat and sharp, and it'll work really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could even perhaps do another live stream just about sharpening, really going into it, because there is a lot to it. We could go through sharpening some chisels, go through sharpening some swords. I reckon there's probably an hour's worth of information on that.
Do you want to talk about
the saw?
Yeah, I mean, basically, so this is the saw that we fixed up. I mean, you watched us do this. It didn't take much time, although that handle did take me a little bit of time off camera sanding it up. But as we discussed, we don't need to do that. These guys come with like little sort of saw nut bolts. I'm not sure what.
Special. Can I get them up closer?
Special kind of like things to hold it together, and quite often they're missing as well. I'm sure you can. There'd be suppliers of these sort of things out there. You could cannibalize some old saws for them, but also it's just a nut and a bolt. So to hold this on, that's all I'm going to do is just put a nut and a bolt on. And actually, wait, I'll just get this washer. I'm going to put some washers on, and that's going to hold it. And for me, like, that just makes it cooler. You know, it's our own special.
You're not gonna cut that back later. You're gonna be.
No, I am. Well, the cool thing I was going to do is that hacksaw that we fixed up. I'm going to bloody use it.
Not right now though, because that's going to make a horrible.
Yeah, but you get the point. So now I've got that hacksaw, my forever hacksaw, and I can chop that little nut off, and then I've got this gangster saw to go out into the world and chop stuff up with. That's awesome.
It is pretty cool.
You can't deny how cool that is.
We should definitely do sharpening.
Yeah, we need to do sharpening. Like we were kind of planning on doing that this week. We're running out of time, but I think we should definitely talk about sharpening in further detail.
Yeah.
How to sharpen these saws. So it's there's a bit to it, but it's not beyond anyone really. No,
it's
none of this stuff is beyond.
And it's
anyone.
also applicable to kitchen knives as well. Having nice sharp kitchen knives, if you know how to sharpen your tools, you get great. Oh man, it's so nice to.
Yeah, for sure. So
we're getting flagged. That we have to really close up.
Yeah, there's I believe there's some kind of survey that's in the comments. Is that right?
We'll be taking that in because of unfortunately the technical difficulties we had. We're going to have to put that in a comment here, and it'll also be available later. We're also hoping to get that's not relevant, but we're hoping to get captions down at the bottom in the video afterwards as well.
So if you're having trouble hearing our two meat mouths speaking words again, that'll help.
Just threw that in my mug.
Oh, bugger.
Yeah. So anyway, flagged again. So coming to a close.
Next week.
I hope you enjoyed that. Let us know how it went. Next week, we're back with the electrical team. And they're going to be talking about fault finding, which is basically, you know, you've got a problem with your lamp. How do you know where it is, and how do they figure out where these things are? It's a really fascinating.
Yeah,
thing.
if you didn't see the one last week, check it out. Like
really good.
it's a bit outside of my wheelhouse, and I'm learning a lot. I don't know if anyone saw the lemons in the kettle last week. I'm not going to say anything more. You have to watch next week to find out gems like that.
Yeah,
But it's gold.
Yeah, it was
So
really
check
good.
it out.
So they're going to be moving on, and they're going to talk about how they find faults. And
Yep.
please send in questions in advance for them to cover. We are going to be back in a few weeks, and I think we're going to be either talking about finishes or maybe sharpening.
Maybe
whichever
sharpening,
one
yeah.
you
See how
want
we
to
go.
cover. Let us know what you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know. It's driven by you guys, so let us know what you want to learn, and we'll try and, if we can, help out.
Yeah.
Nice one. Thanks for joining us today, Shane.
Anytime. I'm usually here. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.